Hello, and welcome to a video series that I'm getting ready to begin. As you can see, there's a lot of parts spread out here in front of me, and what I'm going to be doing is building a Telecaster. Pretty much from scratch, using a lot of components I've selected myself, but the main parts will come from Warmoth. So without further ado, let's go through some of the items here. This is the body. It is an ash two-piece. You can see the bookend joint there, as that is. So it's going to be set up pretty much standard Tele configuration, standard bridge, single coil pickup, front and rear, standard control, and the switch plate route there. And it's a pretty clean piece of wood. I picked this out. There was probably 4 or 5 bodies to choose from, and I really like the grain pattern on this one and how it looked, particularly in light of the pick guard that's going to be on here, the scratch plate, and the position of the grain. So really like the way this body looked. And mentioned the scratch plate again. This is also from Warmoth. This is the 9 thickness as opposed to, I think, the 7th, so it's got the beveled edge. And I got the high gloss black. Edges aren't real shiny. I'm not sure if I'll have to do some work with that or leave the matte appearance. But no, it looks like it fits fantastic. Really, really good match quality there. So looking forward to that. Next piece is the neck. This is one-piece maple, skunk stripe for the truss rod. Again, this is another one I had probably 3 to 5 pieces to choose from, and really wanted one that, you know, I like a lot of grain in it, but I didn't want the headstock to be overly done because I didn't want the decal to get lost in the shuffle there. So this is the vintage modern construction, so it's a 10-inch radius here, tapering down to a 6-inch, just 22 frets. I know the standard Teles have 21, but I'm kind of a 22 fret guy. I've always played that, and so I wanted to, I really didn't see the point in going with 21 when 22 is available. And you know, great fit, gonna look really well in there. And next piece here, I've got some vintage standard Fender Telecaster decals. So the game plan, of course, on this will be to mount that about there, with the D pointing, you know, just above the 3rd tuning peg. That's how I think I'm going to go with this one. So that'll be a future project to get that all aligned. And while we're on the neck, let's go ahead and talk about the tuning keys. These are the Gotoh vintage, and kind of messed up a little bit when I bought these. I had seen the Gotohs online, and I assumed that they were all locking, and then I got these and saw, no, these are like the true vintage where you stick the string in there and then wind them down. You know, kind of went back and forth a little bit as about whether or not I wanted to return them and get the locking ones instead, but you know, this guitar is not going to have a tremolo, it's going to be a hardtail, so I really don't believe that I'm going to have an issue with tuning stability. I think it'll probably be just fine. I mean, you know, people have been playing Teles for years without you know, these locking tuners, so I think these will be fine. And hey, you know, if they're a problem, I'll spend $50 and buy another set a year from now or whatever. String tree, again, to go up here on the headstock, I believe this is just below the 4th hole there, so that'll fit like that. Again, this was also from Warmoth. It's got the grooves here in the back for the 2 strings. I'll have to polish that up a little bit, make sure there's no binding going on. So, you know, it's kind of a throwback to the vintage. I know that the roller ones are better quality and better performance, but again, this doesn't have a tremolo on it, so I think going with the vintage look will be pretty cool. And you know, like I said, this is probably better than the standard washer that Leo Fender originally used when he put these on for the first time. So I believe that takes care of the neck. I also got these ferrules here to go with the tuning machines. These will get pressed in here. I may I may have to open this up just a little bit to get these started. So I can, I might have to do that. I've got the tool here to kind of open that up a little bit if I need to. So let's see what's next. All kinds of goodies here. Neck plate. This is from Fender. It's got the Corona California on the back. So again, you could just pretty much get these anywhere. They have them plain. They have custom shop. They have a number of different ones you can purchase. So let's talk. Let's see the bridge here. This is the bridge. It's made by Wilkinson. It's got the compensated saddles. So it's got the brass spindles that the true Tele tone hounds like, but hopefully with this compensation, intonation will not be a problem. I'm not really sure. I haven't heard a whole lot about it. I know it's probably better than the barrels, but will it be as good as 6 individual saddles? Who knows? I guess we'll find out soon enough. The pickups. I went with DiMarzio on the pickups. So here in the rear, in the bridge, we've got the DP 424, which is the Area T 615, which from what I understand is basically the Tone King, but in a stacked humbucker configuration to make it noiseless. And if you look, you can see the bottom coil and the top coil. So this one's quite a bit larger than the bottom one. And these things are pretty full. They're not a lot of squeeze in there, so these are pretty full pickups in terms of winding. For some reason, DiMarzio ships these things loose, so I've got some shrink wrap to put on here to kind of tidy this up a little bit. And I've had to do this with most of the DiMarzios I've bought in the past. I don't know why they don't do that from the factory, but they don't. The neck is the Area T neck. It's the DP 417, and again, you can see if you look there the stacked humbucker configuration. So it's got the chrome cap in the top and bottom. And again, I can't really feel the top one, but the bottom one is pretty full of wire too, and wires hanging everywhere. So again, more shrink wrap tubing for that. Clean that up. The electronics are pretty much what you would expect. Vintage Fender control plate to go right here. Fender 3-way switch with the big top hat black knob will go on there. For my pots, for the tone pot, I bought a Seymour Duncan smooth turning pot. It's a Bourne's pot and really feels nice. It's tight. I really like the way that feels. That's a nice pot. And I've got the chrome flat top knob. This came from Warmoth as well. Could have got it from Fender just as easily, but since I was already purchasing items from Warmoth, I went ahead and took that from them. For my volume pot, on the recommendation of my brother, I bought the YJM high-speed volume pot for lightning fast starts and stops. And I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm not real impressed with the feel. It doesn't feel as smooth as this one does, and I think it's because there's less lubrication. They kept lubrication light, but it almost feels frictiony in there. I mean, it's not really rough, but it just doesn't feel anywhere as smooth as this one does. I have also in the past used DiMarzio pots, which is pretty much what I planned on using on this one, and they feel much like this one as well. They're tight, very smooth. So I'm sure this one's going to perform just fine once you get the knob on it and you're working it. You probably won't ever notice that. My brother swears by these, so we'll see. But like I say again, just first impressions. I almost think I would rather have 2 regular Seymours or you can just have gone with DiMarzios. But we'll see. I'm sure it'll be fine. Tone caps, I bought these. These are the 047s by Sprague. These are supposedly 1970s OEM. So I'm hoping that'll work fine. I'm not traditionally a big user of the tone knob. With a bright Tele, I probably will become a bigger fan of that. So I got those. And I'm actually going to be doing something a little bit different with the wiring as well. I came across an article that showed some old 1950s wiring. And what they do differently is normally your wire to your volume knob comes here to the lug 1, and then that lug 1 jumps over to your tone knob, over to here. Well, I saw an article that showed, I guess, what the original 1950s did was one wire came here, and then number out of your output of your volume knob, that's what went to the tone. And they said the advantage of that is you don't need a treble bleed circuit, because I was looking into treble bleed when I came across that article. So I'm going to give that a shot and see what happens. You know, hey, if it doesn't work, it's just wiring. I can fix it. Next is the electrostatic jack for the side. And I like this because it's kind of like a funnel, the way it scoops in. This is threaded, which I really like. It also came with a nut and a washer. And what I think I'm going to do, and I'm not sure, maybe this is the way it's intended to work, is I'm going to put the nut and washer on the back side because I really want this to be like a funnel going in there. So I don't know if you're supposed to screw that in and put the nut on the outside, but that's not the way I'm going to go with it. One thing I did notice in looking at the body is where this fits in. It's not flush, it's not radiused. It kind of moves. And I've tried turning at 90 and it still rocks. So what I will probably do before I get into coating is maybe take a round file and kind of open that up a little bit and see if I can get this to sit a little more flush. So I don't have this rock. I mean, I could probably screw it down, it would be fine, but it would feel rough when you come to it. So maybe if I just remove a little bit of material, split the difference or something, I can get that to fit a little tighter, look a little cleaner. So that's going in there. Got the chrome string ferrules to go in the back. And again, I might be reaming out the holes here because these are really tight to press those in. So I'll probably ream this out just a little bit, or maybe not, to see if I can't get a little bit more clearance. Actually, I don't think this reamer's going to work, so maybe that's not going to be an option. But we'll look into that when the time comes. Maybe making this a little bigger. I may have to just take a drill bit and use my fingers to spin it and ream the top of that a little bit. I've also got a countersink bit I can maybe use. I just want to get that lined up a little bit so before I go pressing it, I don't have it crooked or anything. I want to make sure I get it going straight. Because I think once you press these home, there's no going back. So again, that'll all be part of the finishing. And last but not least, we have a Fender Tweed strap, vintage Tweed, which I think will probably look pretty cool. And Fender strap locks. And I like the look of these round ones. I mean, in the past I've used the shower type. It kind of have a half moon that cups it. This one's almost like an air compressor. Quick disconnect. So it's got the ball bearings inside. I don't know if you can see that very well or not, but you push that in. You push that in and open it up to fit over the strap lock end. So I think this is going to look really cool. It's got the Fender F on there. Locks in. Seems to fit pretty well. I don't get crazy and sling guitars over my shoulders, particularly not a Tele. Although I did do that back in the 80s when it was cool. But I just want something that I don't lose my straps. And you do have that problem nowadays. You don't have the right strap locks. So going to color, we're looking for something that's going to approximate a vintage butterscotch look. So what I did was I purchased off the internet from Tint Dyes. I think there's actually from Woodcraft was the company that I found that sells this stuff. I was looking at a lot of different options. I'm not a accomplished painter. It's not something I do on a regular basis, so I'm looking for something that I can do myself. So I bought the honey amber because when I matched the stuff up online, pictures of the guitar and this wood stain, I thought it really, really looked good. But when I started testing it here, I just thought it had too much orange in it, so I went back and bought just the amber, which has more yellow, not as orange. To show you my test strips, and I'll have another video on this that goes into more detail. But I started with the honey amber, half a cup of water, 1 drop of dye, 2 drops, 3 drops, up to 10. Started going by 2s from 12 up to 40, from 44 up to 80, and even this one's 90 drops. And I don't know how well it translates here in this light, but it's pretty orange. And I probably could have picked a spot back here and been okay, but I really was concerned that I would overdo it, get too much orange, and wouldn't like it. So I bought just the regular amber, did a similar test, and this one definitely has a lot more yellow in it, not as orange. So I think this one's going to be a lot better choice. I'll probably start, now this is 12, this is 20, so I'll probably start somewhere in this range and just start building up coats until I get what I think I like. I'm thinking hopefully, you know, I'll probably wind up in this area when it's said and done, but we'll see. For a top coat, I'll be using Tru Oil, and I've seen a number of videos on this online and was really intrigued by it. I think this is going to be fun. But I plan on doing, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 coats, just hand rubbing it on, and then I'm going to go to a wet sanding method that I've watched where you start with, you put the oil on wet and then you sand it with 600 and 1,000 and 1,500, 2,000. You just build up, and when you get to your finishing coats, it really looks amazing. You let it cure for a week and then do your wet sanding and buffing from there. So that's my plan, and I also did that on these sticks because I know it's going to darken the tone, so I wanted to have a before and after that I could compare to. So when I know the color I want, that I can look on the dry side and kind of get an idea where I need to stop to make that happen. So anyway, that's the overview of the project. I plan on getting started on that. Like I said, my parts I think are all here, and so I'll probably get started on that in the future. What I've got to do first, or one of the first few things I've got to do, is I've got to get some clear built up on this, and wet sanded, so I can apply my decals. And I think what my goal is here is to just clear the top of this, and I think the back and the fingerboard and everything are all going to be done in a couple light coats of Tru Oil. I cannot stand the thick lacquer that Fender puts on their necks, which is one of the reasons I didn't buy a Tele, you know, from the store. And I know that I probably could have done that. But what I would have been looking at doing is buying one from a store, buying a MIM or something that I liked, and then replacing the pickups and the neck and everything else, or sanding it down, doing whatever. And it just didn't make any sense, so I've decided to go from scratch. Even though, like I said, I would like to have had a professionally finished body, but I think this will be fun. And you know what, if it turns out bad, we'll sand it down and we'll go get it painted proper. But that's where we're going to start. So we'll do that. We'll start with the neck first. Meanwhile, we'll go with the body. Like I say, this body's probably going to take a better part of a month by the time I do, say, a dozen coats, let it cure for a week, and then do my final buff out. So I think we're probably looking at a month there. Same here. We're going to be looking at, you know, probably a good 2 weeks to get coat built up, get the decal on, a couple more coats built up on top of that before we ever get to the Tru Oil. Probably 3 coats of Tru Oil. We'll see as we go. Steel wool it out. We'll see what we have. I just really want protection on it and a good rough feel, natural feel. So it feels great the way it is right now. I'm also not real delighted with the fret ends. Don't get me wrong, they're not sharp, but they're really not dressed either. If you go across them, they're kind of rough. So I may be taping this off and doing a little bit of light sanding or something on the edges, just to kind of smooth that down. I may take a, you know, like a sanding sponge or something and just hit these ends. Try to soften that up a little bit more. But the neck feels fantastic. It's the standard thin profile. I know a lot of people have the bigger necks, and I get that. I thought about that myself, but all of my other guitars have thin necks, and it's what I like, it's what I know. And I was afraid if I spent the money and got a big boat neck, I wouldn't like it and wouldn't play this guitar that much. And that's certainly not why I'm doing it. And I guess while I'm talking about that, I should probably also say that my other guitars are rockers. They're all with humbuckers. And I wanted to do a Tele that was completely different. So it was really kind of fun going through the process of picking out all my parts. And every time, normally when I'm looking for stuff, I'm looking for words like warm, those type of adjectives. And for this one, I'm looking for more terms like twangy and bright, and you know, going all maple and going with the ash and going with these, you know, this bright pickup. It's going to be kind of a radical departure for me. I'm wanting to go in a completely different direction. So this will kind of be my Keith Richards guitar. It'll be something for playing things that I'm not used to playing. I have a Marshall amp, so I'm used to just playing everything rocky and dirty and raunchy, and gonna get away from that. I'm gonna try to start, you know, playing more blues, more clean, just different stuff. Change things up to make it fun. I'm by no means a great guitarist. This is more just a hobby for me. But you know, actually, the idea of building your own guitar is just wildly appealing to me. I've done some project guitars where I've done electronics upgrades, and we can maybe talk about that in a later video. That's been a lot of fun, but I think this is just kind of the next evolution of that. I want to get to do something that's a little bit, put myself out there a little bit more, build something that's different. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and yeah, that's what it is. So enjoy, and we'll have fun.